Okay, welcome to week 4. This week we're going to be working on the course outline. Now, the course outline is not going to be a very detailed outline. At this point, what you need to do is determine all of the material that you're going to cover in your course. This should be built from the standards that you worked on in the first couple of weeks of class, and from those standards you're determining the scope of what you're going to cover and the time frame of your course. So if your course was going to cover one semester, this is going to be a list of what's going to happen during that one semester's time. You don't have to break this down by day or week at this point in time. You don't need to figure out the individual lesson plans that are going to have it from day to day. We'll do that next week when we get to the unit development. At this point, you're breaking down all the content and figuring out how you're going to make it fit in that time frame. All right? So you're going to have main content headings for each unit, and then you're going to figure out the sub breakdown of each of those main headings, which we'll see a little bit more in detail when we go into the sample unit outline that I'm going to show you in a minute here. You got to be consistent with what you've already said you're going to do. Keep looking back to your standards, look back to your objectives, make sure that everything that you've previously laid out flows right into this course outline. Okay, if you need to go back and make changes to those earlier documents, that's fine. You can do that. You just want to make sure everything flows from one document to the next. Okay. Some of the special considerations you have to think about, at least at this point in time. You don't necessarily have to address just yet. Number one, though, is the time schedule. You've got to have a rough idea of how you're going to fit all of this stuff in. You've got to make sure that you don't have more content than is realistic to fit in the time frame that you have. If there's any fees associated with your course, typically in the public education, you're not going to have fees associated with your classroom, but you might. For those of you working in post-secondary, you may have lab fees associated with your course. You have to consider that. Textbooks and supplies that your students may have to purchase. One thing that you will all have to deal with are the modifications for special needs, and we'll address this specifically in the lesson plans, where I'll have you make some modifications. We'll take a look at some individualized education plans, some IEPs, and show you how to make those modifications. So you don't have to have those in your course outline, but it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you work through this. You're going to have some ideas of how you would modify your content for those students with special needs. Right. So each unit of instruction, they could be centered around a standard, it could be centered around a particular job, a problem, a project. You could just be groupings of similar content. You're going to have to determine how you're going to break down those units. Something that's going to be logical, that's going to make sense. Your units may have to flow into each other unless they're completely independent units, but typically one unit is going to flow into the next and they're going to build, and the content's going to build upon the previous content. So you're going to have to determine what those are going to look like. All right. And the advantages of doing this, for one, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to manage this material. It's going to make it easier for the students to manage the material when you can break it down. You break it down into units, you break those units down into even smaller pieces, and then you're going to break those individual pieces down into your daily lesson plans. Okay. For each unit, you should have an objective. What are the students going to be able to know and do when they finish that unit? Just like for your course, you had very broad objectives for your course. What were the things the students could do when they leave your course? For each unit, those are going to be much more specific. Okay. I'm just going to kind of breeze over this slide because we're going to look at the sample outline, which will probably answer a lot more questions. And we've talked a little bit about performance objectives already. Those are going to set the bar for what your students need to know and be able to do. These could be behaviors, affective things. They could be psychomotor tasks, stuff that your students are going to do with your hands, or they could be in the cognitive domain, knowledge that your students are going to have to know and be able to recall or apply by the end of the unit. You have 3 main parts to your objectives: the performance, the condition, and the criteria. All right, again, we're going to breeze over these because you've already worked on your performance objectives earlier. what I want to do now is jump over to the sample course outline, which is your project for this week. Okay, so now we're into the document. This is the sample document you can download from Blackboard, and this is the sample outline. All right, so what you're going to see here is we have the course title up top, Robotics, which is what I'm using for my sample. And then my first unit is going to be on electrical basics. Okay, so you can see I've summarized the unit down into electrical basics. And then what I did is I took electrical basics and broke it up into 3 categories. I have DC circuits, schematics, and AC circuits. So those would be the 3 core contents that I'm going to cover underneath this unit titled Electrical Basics. And then I break each of those down even further. So under DC circuits, I'm going to cover voltage, current, resistance, series circuits, parallel circuits, and Ohm's law. In my schematics area, I'm going to cover symbols, building circuits from schematics, and drawing schematics from circuits. And then I have an AC circuits unit where I'll work on power supplies and circuit protection. Okay, so I haven't really gotten into the nitty-gritty here. I haven't said exactly what I'm going to do as far as teaching voltage to my students, what kinds of labs or activities I'm going to do. I just know these are the core pieces of content that I'm going to cover within that unit. My second unit is going to be on mechanics. And again, I've got main headings that I'm going to cover. All right, and then each of those main headings have been broken down. All right, so this is what you'll need to do for your course. You're going to have to determine how many units of study you're going to have within that course and what those headings are going to be, those main identifiers for each unit is going to be, and then you're going to break those units down. Okay. Next week what we'll do is we'll pick one of these units and we'll break it down into a day-by-day plan. Okay. But for this point, you need to outline the entire course. Okay. So here I've only done 3 units. If this was my actual robotics course, I would go a lot more than just the 3 units I have here. But this kind of gets you started anyway. You can see what my Unit 4 and Unit 5 would look like. They would have subheadings, and then those would be further broken down. Okay, and that's really all you need to do for this week. Might not look like a lot, but that's going to involve a lot of thinking and planning to lay this out to determine how exactly you want your course to look. All right, again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Once you have a draft of this done, try to post this on the discussion board early in the week so that your peers have a chance to review it and give you some feedback, and then you can make any changes before you turn it in before the due date. Again, pay close attention to the due dates on Blackboard. Make sure you have your assignments turned in before those due dates, and take a look at the rubric, the grading rubrics on Blackboard before you turn the assignments in. And also download the sample assignment. The samples are probably going to be one of your best guides that you have to work from, so you have an idea of the quality and the layout that I'm looking for when you turn in your assignments. All right, thank you, and we'll see you next time.